I used to think revenge came hot raised voices, a slammed door, something theatrical that left the neighbors pretending not to listen. The day Sarah called to say she was moving in with her trainer and carrying his child, I learned revenge can also arrive cold. It can be quiet, slow, and devastatingly organized. It can look like emails with subject lines that say, receipt enclosed, like hold music from HR, like the soft click of a digital lock that no longer recognizes the code you gave someone you loved. It was Thursday, 2001 p.m., when my phone lit up with her name. We'd been together 3 years, engaged for 8 months, living in my house for a year and a half. I had a pan of chicken on the stove and lemon on my fingers. I'm moving in with Tyler, she said. Tyler, the trainer I'd been paying for, the smile with forearms. I'm pregnant. It's his. I'll pick up my things tonight. I turned off the burner because the sound of food cooking suddenly felt too alive for the moment. Congratulations, I said, like a hotel clerk confirming a reservation. You've made your decision. That's all you have to say? I thought you'd fight for me. You're pregnant with another man's child, I said. There's nothing to fight for. She inhaled like she might argue with physics, then said she'd be there at 7. Don't, I told her. Send a list. I'll box your things. You can pick them up from the porch. When the call ended, I didn't throw anything. I didn't cry. I went very still, the way a lake does right before it freezes. Then a different engine started in me, the part of my brain that lives in plans and calendars and deliverables. If love had been the project, then the project had failed. What remained was remediation. The ring first. 6 weeks old, still insured, still under the return policy printed in tiny font no one expects to need. I drove straight to the jeweler, handed the box back, listened to the manager tell me about restocking fees with a kindness that didn't feel like pity because it was anchored in policy. 11,000 came back to my account, 1,000 evaporated as the price of believing in something that couldn't hold. I signed the form and walked out with my hands empty and my pockets heavier. The car next. A leased BMW in her name with my signature underneath like a foundation. I logged into the lender's portal, removed my payment method, then called a woman named Brianna who explained, without judgment, that unless Sarah qualified on her own by the end of the month, the car would need to be returned. I pictured the first of the month ticking closer in the corner of the screen. Please note today's date, I said, and she did. Then access. Wi-Fi, streaming, the door lock, the alarm, the cloud storage, the phone line, the credit card where she was an authorized user, all of it had been designed for a life we shared. All of it was now a liability. I reset passwords, logged out every device, changed the entry code, audited who could see what and from where. It took less than 3 hours to convert our life back into mine. There is a strange sadness to that efficiency. It means you were always the one doing the maintenance. Benefits after that. She had been on my health insurance as a domestic partner. I called HR, requested the change, gave the effective date, listened to the hold music that pretends your emergency can be paused. When the portal updated, I stared at the screen a long time, not with satisfaction, but with a kind of grim respect for systems that work when people don't. Evidence was last, and it was the ugliest word on my list. I didn't go hunting through her phone. I didn't need to. Months ago, when she moved in, I'd set photo backups for every device on our network. It was muscle memory. Keep the memories safe. Now the memories had opinions. There were screenshots of messages with T. Tyler, with lines no trainer should send a client. There were club booking confirmations that matched Uber receipts that matched mirror selfies in hotel bathrooms that matched the dates of our happiest posts. I pulled it all into a timeline, not accusations, just times and places that insisted on being seen together. The truth is boring when you write it down. That's why it's so hard to argue with. At 6:27 p.m., the doorbell rang. The porch camera showed Sarah with 2 suitcases and mascara running like ink. I opened the inner door but kept the chain on. Tyler needs time, she said. He asked me to give him a few days. Please, just tonight. That sounds like a Tyler problem, I said, not a David problem. You can't just cut me off, she snapped. I can't get into anything. The car payment didn't go through. My gym login? You announced you were leaving, I said. I accepted it. You're punishing me for being honest. I'm refusing to fund your decision. I closed the door. She cried for a while. I watched the porch camera until a rideshare pulled up and took her somewhere that wasn't here. In the morning, I called Tom, a lawyer who has seen enough human wreckage to know which pieces are worth saving. I want it to matter, I told him over coffee. Not just to me. I want there to be consequences that exist outside my living room. Then stop thinking like a boyfriend, he said. Start thinking like a risk manager. Your name, your money, and any institution that has a policy you can put in front of them. Her gym was an institution, a luxury club with eucalyptus towels and a code of conduct written by someone who wanted to make sure their liability insurance premium stayed low. The policy's language was polite, almost soothing. Staff shall not initiate or engage in romantic or sexual relationships with current clients. Avoid conflicts of interest. Maintain professional boundaries. Violations may result in immediate termination. Policies are just ideas until someone pushes them into contact with the world. I prepared a packet. The timeline with dates and sources. Screenshots where his messages stopped sounding like coaching and started sounding like an affair. Club booking emails. Uber receipts. Photo metadata. A copy of the policy with the relevant sections highlighted. A letter that said simply, I am not seeking money. I am seeking enforcement. I asked them to preserve their records. I asked for nothing else. Alicia from HR called the next morning. "We received your documentation," she said. "We will be suspending Mr. Jackson pending an investigation. Are you willing to provide original files for verification?" I gave her a link. She asked if my fiancée was still a client. "She was," I said. "She isn't." She thanked me and told me I'd hear back in 10 business days. We were both very polite because the work was ugly. Sarah left me a voicemail that afternoon from a number I didn't recognize. "You are sick," she said. "You got him suspended. Do you feel powerful?" I saved the recording and did not call back. There was nothing to talk about that wouldn't sound like me narrating a crime she wanted to call a misunderstanding. Her sister called my work line, which is a boundary I never told her existed and she never considered. "She's pregnant," Jessica said, skipping my name, skipping hello. "You can't just abandon her." "She abandoned me," I said, and it was a relief to say it out loud. She announced she was moving in with another man and having his child. "I am not a safety net you deploy when the person you chose steps aside." "You're cold," she said. "I'm finished," I said, which isn't the same thing but sounded close enough. The club moved faster than I thought they would. On Friday, 3 days after the packet, Alicia called again. "We've concluded our investigation," she said. "Mr. Jackson has been terminated for cause." I thanked her and said nothing else because victory is loudest when you deny it a speech. Sarah showed up that evening with fury replacing tears. "You ruined his career," she said through the crack in the door. "You did this because you couldn't keep me." "He ruined his career when he slept with clients," I said. Plural. Her face changed at that word, plural. "Guilt has a way of revealing the things you meant to keep buried." "You're lying," she said, but the lie was tired and we both heard it yawn. There's a rhythm to consequences when they finally get traction. The lender sends Sarah a deadline to assume the lease or return the car. My bank flagged multiple attempts on the canceled Card Baby boutique, gas stations, a hotel I knew too well, each one declined. The health insurance portal no longer welcomed her. The smart lock on my front door politely ignored her code. Systems, it turns out, are immune to speeches. Her parents came by Sunday, concern crumpled into anger. The way love looks when it's asked to pay a bill it didn't ring up. "She needs stability," her mother said. "She is carrying a child. Your child once. Almost." "She is carrying his child," I said. "She made an adult choice. These are adult consequences." Her father's jaw worked like he was chewing on a word he couldn't swallow. "You got a man fired." I told his employer what he did while wearing their name tag, I said. They handled the rest. They left without slamming the door, which is a different kind of grace. By Tuesday, the social version of the story started to catch up with the private one. The gym posted an internal reminder about boundaries that someone screen grabbed for me. No names, but everyone knew. A tiny supplement brand that had courted Sarah for collabs emailed her and, by mistake, me, asking if there were reputational concerns they should be aware of. He had built an identity around that club. Motivational captions, photos in front of the green wall, the hashtag with the club's name nestled between grind and blessed. The blue check mark she chased went quiet. The comments turned questions into accusations. Keeping up appearances is exhausting work. She ran out of energy first. I shipped her box belongings to her parents' address with tracking and a signature requirement, then texted the number she still hadn't realized I controlled, delivered Friday by 5. "Please do not come to the house again. Communicate in writing." It felt formal and inhuman. It was the only way to keep my humanity intact. She filed a complaint with my HR alleging harassment for interfering with her medical care. HR called me into a glass-walled room with a fern and a box of tissues that looked unused. I slid a folder across the table with dates and receipts, when I removed her from insurance, how I notified her, a list of the only times I had responded to her or her family since. "I am not interfering with her care," I said. "I'm declining to pay for it." The HR rep nodded. The meeting ended quickly. The tissues remained pristine. Meanwhile, the club quietly reached out to the National Certification Board for trainers. Alicia forwarded me their request, names redacted, to share any documentation that suggested a pattern. I granted permission. If a man uses a credential to gain trust and then exploits it, the credentialing body deserves to know. So do future clients. This wasn't about my pain anymore. It was about removing the next opportunity he'd have to make someone else pay for his charisma. Sarah tried one more variation of the same song. She showed up at my regular gym and intercepted me by the dumbbells with a face that could have sold contrition to a priest. 2 minutes, I told her, and watched relief flood her shoulders as if I'd given her a house instead of a stopwatch. "I made a mistake," she began. "You made a plan," I said. "I was lonely," she offered. "You were greedy," I answered. "I love you. You love being kept. You love being kept." She blinked like the insult hadn't occurred to her before. "You're different," she said, and she was right. The part of me that would have tried to save her from her own momentum had learned a new word. No. "Find another gym," I said quietly. "This one's mine." If you're waiting for the part where I confessed to missing her, here it is. I did. Not the version who lied to me, not the one who rehearsed victimhood in the mirror, but the one who wrapped her legs around mine on the couch and fell asleep 5 minutes into a movie. Love is not a switch. It's a muscle you stop using until one day you realize it has atrophied enough not to hurt. What saved me wasn't anger, it was routine. I went to work, I cooked for myself, I ran long, slow miles that burned the fog, I spoke to a therapist who didn't let me congratulate myself for being efficient and asked me gently whether my competence had ever been a way to avoid my grief. I sat with that. I let it in. I didn't let it drive. A week after Tyler's termination, a letter arrived from the club's legal team. It was spare and satisfying, acknowledgement of the violations, confirmation of his dismissal, a statement that they had referred the matter to the certification board, and a line that said, "We will be auditing our internal practices to ensure client safety." I didn't frame it, but I did read it twice and put it somewhere safe. Not because I needed a trophy, because I needed proof that the world sometimes works the way it should when you push it correctly. Her car was repossessed the following Thursday at 6:12 a.m. According to the timestamp on the photo, the tow company texted me by mistake because my number was still on file. The image showed a silver machine being pulled into a future it couldn't outrun. I stood at the window with my coffee and watched the sky lighten. Somewhere in the city, Sarah woke up to the sound of a driveway emptier than the night before. Somewhere else, Tyler scrolled job boards and learned that moving his talents independent was harder without a credential. People ask whether I enjoyed any of it. Enjoyed is the wrong verb. I felt relief, not glee, not triumph. Relief is the breath you didn't know you were holding finally leaving your chest. When Sarah's cousin, who once did a semester of law school and kept the vocabulary, emailed to threaten a defamation suit if I continued to spread lies, I responded with a simple sentence, "Please identify the lies." I attached the club's letter and the policy sections they had enforced. I CC'd the HR contact because sunlight is a disinfectant. The cousin did not reply. He never does when the homework is due. If this sounds like I turned into a machine, maybe I did for a while. Machines are consistent. They don't take the bait. They don't argue with people who are performing because a performance needs an audience and a machine doesn't clap. I kept my world small and clean: work, sleep, food, movement, a few friends who brought normal conversation with them like firewood. My mother stopped by with lasagna and wiped my counters the way mothers do when words would just set you off again. We didn't say much. We didn't need to. I thought I'd reached the end of phase one the night I stood in my kitchen with the lights off, a glass of water sweating in my palm, and realized I could hear my house breathe again. Then my phone buzzed with an email from a name I didn't recognize, the regional manager for the hotel chain that had become the setting for too many of Sarah's selfies. They'd received credible reports that their corporate rate had been abused by an employee of the club. Would I, as the original complainant, be willing to share any documentation that might help their internal review? I forwarded the message to Alicia instead of replying. The point was never to be everywhere. The point was to set the right domino and step back. By the time the certification board opened its inquiry, the story had shifted in a way I hadn't anticipated. This had started as my private disaster. It had become something larger, an instance of an old pattern: the man who confuses access with consent, the woman who learns her value from how loudly someone else wants her, the institution that looks away until it's forced to look. I hadn't set out to teach anyone a lesson. I had set out to stop paying tuition for a class I hadn't signed up for. If other people learned from the mess, that was extra. Sarah posted one last time, a photo of a sunrise with a caption about starting over in true strength. The comments were split cleanly between people who didn't know and people who suddenly did. Then her feed went quiet. Quiet is a choice and a consequence, both. I wish I could tell you I slept like a baby after that. I didn't. Sleep came in thin sheets that slipped off at 3 a.m. I'd stand at the window and count trash cans, count porch lights, count the number of times a person can rehearse a conversation that will never happen and still find new lines in it. My therapist told me to write down the questions I kept asking in my head and then answer them like I'd answer a friend. So I did. No, you didn't overreact. No, you don't owe her a softer landing than the one she aimed at. Yes, you loved her. Yes, that love was real. No, the truth does not make you cruel. No, you don't need to explain yourself to people who have already decided what you should have done. Yes, you're allowed to want boring now. Boring became a goal, not an insult. Boring is a house where the only surprises are the ones you planned, where the door locks work and the Wi-Fi doesn't drop during the only part of the movie that matters. Boring is a morning where the coffee tastes the same as yesterday because you weren't up late fighting a fire you didn't start. This is where the second phase begins, but it's not tonight's story. Tonight's story ends with a house that recognizes me again, a trainer out of a job and under review, a car gone from a driveway it shouldn't have been in, and a woman who mistook my silence for softness, learning that silence can also be a strategy. The paperwork was done. The dominoes were falling. The cold, tidy kind of revenge had done everything it could without raising its voice. Tomorrow would be for the final letters, the ones that close the last door she still imagines are open, and for the phone call that makes a rumor into a record. Tonight, I turned off the porch light, locked the door, and went to bed in a home that had finally stopped speaking in someone else's voice. The next morning, I woke up before my alarm, the way you do before a flight or a funeral. The house was quiet in a way that made me notice the small noises, the heat clicking on, a neighbor's door, a truck 2 streets over. I made coffee and added nothing to it, as if sugar would be an apology I didn't owe myself. The pile of boxed up belongings by the door looked like a museum exhibit about a life that used to live here. I had a short list for the day. None of it was dramatic. All of it would matter. First, the last doors I could close. I called the hospital where Sarah had done her intake. I'm not the father, I told the receptionist, who transferred me to someone who understood what those words mean in practice. I won't be signing an acknowledgement of paternity now or at birth. Please note that no bill should come to me, she explained kindly, that because we were not married, my name would not appear unless I signed. The birth certificate would list the mother and no father until one acknowledged or a court ordered it. I thanked her and sent the follow-up email Tom had drafted that said the same thing in formal language. I would not be bullied into raising a child I didn't create. I would also not be dragged into a legal swamp by silence. Then there was the rumor mill. People don't sit with the truth, they sand it down until it's smooth enough to pass around. I told nobody besides my family and two close friends. I posted nothing. I answered questions with, "We've separated," and changed the subject. It felt like I was swallowing a statement I wanted to shout, but it kept me from handing my story to the kind of people who collect them. If anyone needed to know more, there were documents for that. I wasn't going to become an exhibit for anyone's curiosity. At 10, Alicia from the club called again. "There's one more thing," she said. "We reviewed session logs and access logs. There's evidence of timesheets submitted for training sessions that did not occur while rooms were charged at the hotel. We've referred that part to the parent company's compliance team and, separately, to the certification board." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. It wasn't vindication. It was confirmation that this wasn't just my private hell. It was an institutional problem that finally had daylight on it. By noon, the certification board reached out directly. Their email was spare and clinical. "We have opened an ethics inquiry regarding Mr. Tyler Jackson. Your materials may be relevant. Please reply if you consent to sharing." I replied yes. If a credential is a promise, then he'd use that promise like a key to other people's doors. Keys like that should be taken away. I wish I could tell you that the administrative part, the letters, the calls, the PDFs, made the ache smaller. They didn't. They gave the ache walls. They kept it from flooding the house. On Wednesday, Sarah tried a new angle. She called from a number I didn't recognize and left a voicemail in a tone I've heard her use on customer service reps when she wanted upgrades she hadn't paid for. "David," she said, "I'm asking you one last time to meet. If you don't, I'll have no choice but to talk to your mother and your boss. People should know what you really are." I saved the voicemail and sent it to Tom with a one-line question. "Harassment?" He called me back laughing in that disbelieving way that isn't joy. "Do nothing," he said. "If she escalates, we'll send a letter. For now, let her words sit in your folder and gather dust." 2 days later, she escalated. Not in a productive way, these things rarely are, but in a messier one. A mutual acquaintance texted me a screenshot of Sarah's private story, a photo of a sonogram, a caption about abandonment, and a sentence that implied I was refusing to step up. My chest went hot and then cold. I typed a response to the acquaintance that contained 3 paragraphs, then deleted all of it and wrote, "We're not together. I wish her well. I didn't correct the lie with my own messy truth. I didn't correct the lie with my own messy truth." The people who mattered had already seen what facts looked like on paper. Meanwhile, the club's decision had started to spread in the only way that matters in certain circles, quietly and completely. Another gym in the city, one of their competitors, reached out to me through Alicia asking for any public statements they could rely on. They weren't looking for gossip, they were doing what I was doing, managing risk. I had no statement to give them because I wasn't going to become a press office for my own heartbreak. That didn't stop them from learning what they needed. Fitness is a small world wrapped in a big one. Word travels faster than policy memos. By end of week, Tyler's friendly headshots on local fitness pages had vanished like someone had flipped a breaker. The first sign that Sarah's professional life was truly unraveling came, ironically, from the influencer brand I'd never heard of. They wrote again, this time to Sarah alone. She forwarded it to me with a subject line that said, "Look what you did." The email was a single paragraph. "Given recent developments involving staff at Club Name, we have decided not to proceed." It didn't mention her name. It didn't have to. She sent me another message 5 minutes later, a wall of text full of blame and past tense memories, all the little things I'd done right, all the ways she had felt safe, transformed, weaponized, as a ledger that proved I owed her soft landings forever. I didn't reply. A ledger is only useful if both parties recognize the math. The car went first, repossessed at dawn. A neighbor told me later she heard the clank and thought it was someone moving. In a way, it was. Sarah had to move back into her childhood bedroom, a space she'd once described as a time capsule for bad bangs and worse decisions. The irony didn't comfort me. I don't take joy from people scraping their knees on a floor they polished for themselves, but I won't throw them a pillow either. She tried to get her job back at the club. That part I didn't engineer. Policy did. They had terminated Tyler. They had no appetite for being the stage for the aftermath. She sent me a long, furious text that said they had revoked her access badge because of you. I sent back one line, because of policy. If she wanted me to be the villain, she needed me to twirl a mustache. I shaved instead. A week later, the certification board sent their decision, Tyler's credentials suspended pending a formal hearing. The letter included language I read twice. Slow. "We have determined there is sufficient evidence of ethical violations involving multiple clients. During the suspension, the individual may not represent themselves as certified by this board." It wasn't permanent. It was something. It was a sign that the world has mechanisms for accountability that don't require you to light yourself on fire to keep others warm. That's when Sarah tried contrition. She asked to meet for coffee in a public place. I agreed, not because I thought there was anything left to say, but because I wanted to look the past in the eye and confirm it wasn't hiding some mercy I'd missed. She arrived in a sweater I'd bought her last winter, the one she'd insisted was too much and then wore every other week. Her face looked smaller without the performance. She held her cup with both hands like warmth could be transferred from things that don't care about you. "I'm sorry," she said, the words landing like pennies on a table. "I lost everything." "You didn't lose it," I said. "You spent it." She blinked, and for a second the anger was gone, and the girl I proposed to was there. "He told me he would leave for me," she said, quieter. "He said we were meant. I believed him because it felt good to be wanted like that." "I know," I said. "I know exactly how good it feels to be wanted like that. That's why people use it." "I don't have a job," she said. "No one will hire me in fitness. The club told everyone I violated policy. The other places ask if I'm eligible for rehire, and then they stop calling. I applied for front desk at a boxing studio, and the manager asked if I was the girl from the posts." "That's not because of me," I said. "That's because of the facts." The club answered a question truthfully. "The rest is the internet doing what it does." "I'm pregnant," she said, and I realized how often she used that line as a key she expected to open locked doors. "Don't you care?" "I care about a child coming into the world," I said. "I don't care to be the person you call when the man you chose acts like the man you chose." She nodded slowly. "I thought you'd scream," she said. "I thought you'd call me names and maybe throw something." "I hired a printer," I said, "and I made phone calls in business hours." She almost smiled. "That's worse," she said. "It makes me feel small." "I'm sure the policy did that on its own," I said, not unkindly. We sat there a minute, two people who had once planned a life now making the kind of small talk strangers do when they haven't figured out how to stand up without bumping into the table. "I won't list you on anything at the hospital," she said. "I won't put your name anywhere. I know it's not yours." "Thank you," I said, and meant it. She stood to leave and then turned back like she had to make sure she'd checked the box. "You won," she said, but it sounded less like an accusation now and more like a summation she wanted me to sign. "There was nothing to win," I said. "There was only the truth." A month crawled by. My house learned my rhythm again. The hour I wake, the way I load a dishwasher, the section of couch where I read on Sundays until the sun hurts my eyes. I changed the art on the walls because I wanted to look at something I chose for me. I ran in the mornings until the cold bit my lungs, then walked the last block home, head steaming, a man-shaped cloud in a winter city that didn't care, and somehow that helped. The last piece fell into place on a Tuesday afternoon when Alicia called. Her voice had that calm of someone giving news that's been decided by a committee. "The board concluded their hearing," she said. "Mr. Jackson's certification has been revoked for 5 years. He can reapply then under probation, but there's a permanent note on his file. We've also updated our client staff policy training and added required reporting." I said thank you. What I wanted to say was, I am not the kind of man who prays. But if I were, I would have asked for exactly this, not humiliation, not a public flogging, just a record. Something official that says, this happened and it matters. 2 nights later, an email landed from a local reporter who covers wellness culture with the tone of someone who has seen its shadow. "We've received tips about boundary issues at club names," she wrote. "Off the record, did you experience any? If not, no need to reply." I didn't reply. I didn't need a headline. I already had a life. Sarah had the baby in April. I know because Jessica texted me a photo I didn't ask for, a squinty bundle wearing a hat that made the head look like a turnip. "You should know," she wrote. I typed and erased 3 responses and then sent the only one that didn't feel like a line in a screenplay. "I wish the child health," I wrote. "Please do not contact me again." She didn't. A week later, an envelope arrived with hospital branding addressed to me by mistake. Inside was a generic form about birth certificate corrections. I forwarded it to Tom and then to the return address with a note, "I am not the father. Please remove my information from any files." They apologized. It wasn't personal. Nothing ever is when it's on a template. Tyler sent me one email. It was short. "You made your point." I didn't answer. I wasn't here to dialogue. He'd made his point too many times, just with different tools. Summer came. The light changed. The space in the closet where her coats used to live became a place for my bicycle, which felt like a small metaphor you could put on a coffee mug. I started seeing someone casually, Elena, a public defender with a laugh that sounds like she forgot she had one. I told her the short, non-messy version of the story on our 3rd date. She nodded like a person who has watched other people's worst days and still believes most of us are trying. We didn't make plans, we made dinner. It felt like exactly enough. Months later, I ran into Sarah on a sidewalk I used to get to the grocery store. She was pushing a stroller and talking to her mother. We made eye contact at the same time and looked away at the same speed. There was no scene, no speech, just 2 people who used to brush their teeth in the same sink passing like weather. My phone buzzes less now. The folders in my email sit there like a museum I don't visit anymore. The house stays clean unless I personally mess it up. Revenge didn't look like fuel poured on a car. It looked like a filing cabinet that closes all the way. It looked like a culture that decided to believe its own rules. It looked like a man learning that sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is be dull, consistent, relentless. Boring, Tom called it. Boring wins. People imagine catharsis as loud. Mine was a Tuesday at 9,113 p.m., standing in my kitchen with the window open, the smell of rain in the screen, realizing I hadn't thought about Tyler's forearms or Sarah's late night text in days. The story had stopped demanding to be told back to me. It had turned into something else, a lesson that didn't need its title on the board. I don't know if you'll hear this and think I went too far. Maybe you believe that love requires a softer landing, even for the people who cut your parachute. All I can tell you is, I didn't drag anyone. I didn't lie. I didn't embellish. I didn't scream on the internet. I let documents speak. I let policies do their job. I removed my money and my name from places where they didn't belong. And when the urge to be theatrical showed up, I made tea instead. What do you think? Would you have handled it differently? If this story pulled you in, tell me your take in the comments. Hit like if you want more stories where the truth does the heavy lifting, and subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Sometimes the biggest plot twist isn't the scream, it's the paperwork.